We are finally here. We are finally going to dive into Chris Claremont's and Jim Lee's X-Men from 1991. And this was a big moment. Like, you have to understand, back in 1991, this was a huge changing point for Marvel Comics. Really a huge changing point for X-Men comics, because you now had X-Force, you had a new X-Factor team, and then you had two new X-Men team that were being led by Chris Claremont, but the main book, the X-Men book, was being written by Chris Claremont and drawn by Jim Lee. Like, you had so much happening in the early stages of this era. And guys, I'm so excited that we are able to just finally dive into this. Now, today's video, we're going to cover X-Men issue number 1 through 3, because it's a 3-part story arc that really does establish a lot of things that we are going to see down the road in later books when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. And that would be Magneto. So let me explain. When it comes to Magneto, when it came to Chris Claremont, really, he had this huge change in the character of Magneto, because at first he was the X-Men's main bad guy, right? But then under Chris Claremont, we saw Magneto go through a huge change where he became an actual hero, an actual teacher. You see, when Charles Xavier stepped down as the headmaster of the school, Magneto took over. And matter of fact, he was the leader of the X-Men, the main teacher for the New Mutants. But then after a while, we saw him go back to his old ways, but not completely. So by this point in our coverage over the X-Men, this is a guy who's just tired of the human race, because he had tried so hard to make things better for mutant kind. He tried it his ways. That did not work. He even tried it Charles Xavier's ways. And of course, that did not work either. And so he just left the Earth and went over to Asteroid M to be left alone. He made a base on the asteroid. Now, in the opening pages of the book, we can kind of see that this begins the process of pushing him back into the role of a bad guy, because in the opening pages of X-Men number 1, we do pick up with a spaceship trying to head over to the base of Asteroid M to see Magneto, except they're being followed by 2 other spaceships. Now, I want to focus on the main one that's trying to get away, and the reason why, because they're looking for Magneto, because they look at Magneto as their leader, that's somebody who can actually save the mutant race. Now, the other spaceships, they're also stopped by Magneto as well, but after doing that and hearing these 2 mutants cry out for his help, he says, you know what? I'm going to take all 3 spaceships over to my asteroid and see if we are able to sit down and figure out what exactly is going on. But like I said, this begins the whole idea of Magneto going back into his role as the super villain. But now we have to jump over to the Soviet Union. And this is really important because there is a long history with the Soviet Union and Magneto. But that history is going to be brought up in later chapters in today's video. But we do see the Soviet Union freaking out. And the reason why, because Asteroid M floats right above their country. Like, yes, it's in space, but it's floating right above their country. And so because of their past with Magneto, they are very concerned about what he could possibly do to them, but also the rest of the world. And so they call up Washington, D.C. to begin the process of the Magneto protocols. Now, we're going to learn more about that here down the road, but just know it's really important. Now, we jump over to Nick Fury, who's talking to the President of America, and he says, hey, we might begin the Magneto protocols. But for Nick, he has a other idea to see if Magneto is actually a possible threat. And of course, he's talking about the X-Men. And so this begins the idea of having the X-Men going up against Magneto, but we're also going to see the X-Men split up into 2 different teams. Because around this point in time in Marvel Comics, you had a good chunk of X titles out there. You had Excalibur, you had X Factor, you had X Force, you had Wolverine. But when it came to the Uncanny X-Men, well, when X Factor, the original X Factor, had rejoined the X-Men, you now had 14 characters. And really, that was enough to have two different teams to go out there on different kind of missions and to handle things at separate times. And so this book right here kind of kicks off the idea of having X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue. So when it comes to X-Men Gold, that will be Storm's team. And Storm's team is going to be taking place in Uncanny X-Men. And yes, we're still going to continue our coverage over Uncanny X-Men as well. Now, the ones going to join Storm team is going to be Jean Grey, Archangel, Colossus, and Iceman. Now, for Blue team, which is Cyclops team, is going to be Wolverine, Beast, Gambit, Psylocke, and Rogue. And honestly, Blue team is a whole lot better than Gold team. Like, they are definitely stacked. But the reason why Cyclops and Storm are the two leaders of those two teams, because over the years in Marvel Comics or X-Men comics, those two characters were the two leaders of the X-Men for a very long time. First was Cyclops, and then he stepped down and Storm took over. So it only makes sense that those two characters would be the leaders of the two X-Men teams. Now, we do see the X-Men testing out their new defensive system, but it's also a way for Jim Lee to kind of show us the new outfits that most of the X-Men are going to wear from this point on until the next costume changes down the road. But later on, we see that Nick Fury had called up the X-Men. Now, this is Nick expressing the idea the Soviet Union is very worried about Magneto having his spaceship, or his Asteroid M, right over their country. Now, you have Nick say, listen, they're not going to do anything at all, but they're getting very close to just pulling the trigger. But for the X-Men, they're kind of wondering, why in the world are they so afraid of Magneto? Or why are they trying to go after him for? Like, yes, there is a long history between the two parties, but Magneto hasn't done anything at all. The 3 spaceships that flew towards his asteroid, yes, they were destroyed, but all the people on those spaceships have survived. They're currently being kept on his asteroid at the moment. And so for the X-Men, they're kind of wondering what to do here, because 1, Magneto is being peaceful, but 2, he used to be an ally. Remember, like I said, he was the headmaster of the school. He was also the leader of the X-Men. Only recently, he has stepped away from both of those roles. And so for our heroes, they're kind of like, we need time to think about this. But getting back over to the process of seeing Magneto slowly turning into a bad guy, we jump over back to his Asteroid M. Now, like I said earlier, he was able to take all the people who were in those 3 different spaceships over to his asteroid. Now, we do have 2 different crews. The ones in yellows are mutants who are trying to get away from the human race to find Magneto, to find their leader. And that would be Fabian Cortez, Anna Marie Cortez, and I forgot the third person's name. But for Fabian and also Anna Marie, they're going to be very important for this book, especially Fabian. Now, the Green Crew, they work for S.H.I.E.L.D., but they are just regular humans. And so they're very upset with Fabian and his crew because 1, they followed the crew all the way out into space, but 2, those 3 spaceships got destroyed and now they're stuck on Asteroid M. And so you do have both crews fight against each other. Now, Magneto did put a barrier around his room to cancel out everyone's powers to make sure nobody actually gets hurt. Except when Magneto walks into the room, Anna Marie actually does get hurt by one of the humans. And this moment right here is really the starting point of Magneto saying, okay, you know what? Forget you humans. Like, you just attacked a mutant who was just trying to get away from you. Like, you brought her down. Even though you're telling me that you work for law enforcement, what right do you have to kill somebody who was not actually attacking you? And so for Fabian, this is also his moment because he's now telling Magneto, hey, listen, man, right now, back down on Earth, they are gathering up together, teaming up, all these different countries, getting ready to attack you, coming after you. And right now, with what you did earlier by destroying all their spaceships, they took that as a statement of war. And so now you need to give them a bigger statement to tell them that you are somebody to not mess with. And so you then have X-Men realize that Magneto is now coming down to Earth. And so you have Charles say, okay, blue team, you gotta go. And that would be Cyclops team. And so they take the Blackbird and they begin to fly over to where Magneto is at. And this begins us sitting down and discussing the long history between Magneto and also the Soviet Union. You see, when it comes to the Soviet Union, a long time ago, they tried to attack Magneto. And it was a time where Magneto was trying to get rid of all nuclear weapons across the world. And unfortunately, the Soviet Union kind of took that as a possible threat down the road and tried to take him down with nuclear missiles. Now, they were going to use a submarine that was holding some nuclear missiles and fire them at Magneto. But Magneto found the submarine and sent it to the bottom of the ocean, killing off every single person inside that submarine. But right now in the present day, he's bringing that same one right back up again. And the reason why? Because all the nuclear missiles inside that submarine can still be used if Magneto wants to. But right now, he's going to use them as a self-defense against people who might try to attack his asteroid. He said, hey, I'm not going to use it right now, but if you try anything, I will send one of these things down from my asteroid to your country. Now, while he's trying to leave, he is confronted by the X-Men. And this is really important because it really shows that the X-Men are not trying to reason with the man, trying to listen to the man. You see, as soon as they see him, they're trying to attack him because they already believe that Magneto has slipped up, that Magneto has gone back to his old ways again. Now, the only person who's really trying to talk to Magneto is Rogue. And honestly, this is a callback to some of the early days of Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men, where you basically had him establish that Rogue and Magneto had some kind of feelings for each other. And honestly, those feelings are still there. And so she's the only person trying to talk to Magneto, to reason with Magneto. But while trying to have this conversation with him, well, you had the Soviet Union try to attack Magneto, but Rogue was in the way. And so, well, she gets hurt by their attack. Now, for Magneto, that is another example that mutants will never be free, that mutants will always be a target for the human race. And so he does use one of the nuclear missiles in the upper atmosphere. And so honestly, the ground level is not seriously damaged, but he did release nuclear radiation in the sky now. But you do have Magneto retreat back to his asteroid to get away from everyone else. Now, Magneto did get hurt from his battle against the X-Men, but also because the nuke that he used. And so once he does get back to the asteroid, you do have Fabian Cortez use his powers to heal up Magneto, which is only one of his many abilities that he actually has. You see, when it comes to Fabian, he has a range of different kinds of powers. Healing is just one of them. Matter of fact, he also has the ability to enhance other mutants' powers to extreme levels. But currently, he's just trying to heal up Magneto. But we kind of see that Fabian is really upset with Magneto being hurt. Now, after Rogue was hit by the Russian planes, she crash landed in Genosha. Now, we had talked about this country before. You see, originally, Genosha was this country in Marvel Comics where they were trying to paint this picture as a perfect country, that if you go there, you never want to leave. But in reality, if you were a mutant, you were a slave. Now, recently, the X-Men were able to begin the process of turning things around in that country, where mutants are no longer slaves, that now they are free and they now have the ability to do whatever they want. Except Rogue had crash land after her conversation with Magneto, but being attacked by the Russian planes. Except when she wakes up, they tell her right now Genosha is being attacked by a group of superpower beings. And we kind of find out that it is the Acolytes. Now, this gives us our first appearance of this group. A group of characters that are going to be Magneto's followers, but also his strike team as well. Now, the reason why they are here is for two different things. First, it's Rogue. They want to see if Rogue is going to join their side, be next to Magneto, and begin the process of changing things. But also, they came here to attack Genosha because this country, like I said before, was a country full of slaves, mutants who were slaves and being forced to do things for the human race. And so they believe this country should pay for all their past crimes, even though this is a country that's going through a huge change. Now, you have Rogue trying her best to stop them, but you know, there's too many of them. But luckily for her, the X-Men do arrive, and we do get a lot of great pages drawn by Jim Lee when it comes to our heroes fighting against the Acolytes. Now, we're also getting a small tease of the idea that there might be some kind of connection between Wolverine and also Fabian Cortez, but only a small tease, and that is really it. Now, something else I should mention is that some of the Acolytes are actually just regular humans who are being controlled by Fabian's sister Anna Marie to kind of help fill the team out. And so you have our heroes wondering, why in the world are these regular humans helping out this mutant group to attack a supposed mutant hating nation? Either way, you have our heroes go up against the Acolytes, but then Magneto arrives. Now, the last page of the book is where you have Magneto appear. And when he does, he tells everyone to just stop. And everyone does in their tracks. And he says, listen, I'm going to tell you guys right now that these people are under my watch. I will take full responsibility for their actions today. He even says it was not him who has sent the Acolytes down to Earth to attack Genosha. They came here on their own. But I want to say that any punishment that you guys believe they deserve will not be happening at all. Only I, Magneto, can give them the punishment that they actually deserve. Because again, I will take full on responsibility for their actions. And also, they came from Asteroid M. And this is where he said Asteroid M is going to be a safe haven for all mutants around the world. If mutants around the world want to come there, they can. And they will be protected by me from the human race. Even the X-Men and Charles Xavier are welcome. And just like that, Magneto has kind of slipped back into the role of a bad guy, but again, not completely, because this is a man who just wants to protect his people. And so as we dive into X-Men number 2, we kind of see the X-Men continuing to argue with Magneto. Now, this argument is really more the idea of saying, listen, your Acolytes have to pay for what they have done to Genosha, to the innocent lives lost in this country. But for Magneto, he's kind of like, why should he? Or why should they? I'm sorry. Because for Magneto, he's like, Genosha had many years of slavery, so many years of slavery on the mutant race. And so what my Acolytes did may seem wrong, but for me, it was the right punishment to give to this country. Now, you have Genosha begin to attack back with their magistrate. And so you have Magneto try to defend himself, but to also take down the magistrate as well. Now, you have the X-Men fighting against the Acolytes, but I want to focus on Fabian Cortez going up against Psylocke because, like I said earlier, Fabian has the ability to enhance people's powers to extreme levels. And so when he is able to touch Psylocke, he is able to take her powers to extreme levels, where she is now able to read all the minds on the entire island, in the entire country. And for Psylocke, she's not a powerful psychic like Jean Grey or Charles Xavier, but she's still up there. But also, this is just too much for her to handle on her own. Now we jump over to Nick Fury, who's having a meeting with some of the world leaders, and the world is watching what's happening in Genosha. They're watching what Magneto is doing over there. He is destroying the entire country. And so you have Genosha freaking out because thanks to the whole extension agenda where they almost went to war against America, but also show what they did to the mutant race, there were a lot of restrictions put down on Genosha by other countries. So they don't have the right resources to actually fight back against Magneto. They're calling out for help. But while they're doing that, you have these world leaders technically tell Nick Fury that it may be time to go ahead and use the Magneto protocol. I want to shift our focus back on Psylocke because, like I said, she's hearing all the minds of every single person in this country. And right now, there is a lot of hatred towards the mutant race. Now, Beast is able to get some of the crowd away from her. And you have Fabian very excited in what he was actually able to do to Psylocke. But then you have Gambit being able to knock him out. Now, for Magneto, enough is enough. He hates the idea of seeing the mutant race fighting against each other, the Acolytes and him fighting against the X-Men. To him, the mutant race should be coming together and going after the human race, or going after their enemies. But as we go back to the base of the X-Men, we see Charles Xavier, Banshee, and Forge just watching and seeing what is happening over in Genosha. And for Forge and Banshee and Charles Xavier, they do know that some of the countries are actually talking about using the Magneto protocols. But the problem is Forge has no idea what those actually are. Now, for Charles Xavier, he's kind of wondering where Moira McTaggart is at, because at this point in time, her and Banshee and Forge were staying with the X-Men. And so you have Banshee say, hey, I don't know. She's not in the secure area of the school, so I should go find her. But you have Charles say, no, I'll go find her because I need to talk to her. Now, for Banshee and Forge, they're kind of worried of Charles Xavier leaving the secured area, but he wants to talk to Moira McTaggart. But getting back over to the battle with the X-Men, they're still battling against Magneto. Now, while battling against Magneto, we cannot forget that Psylocke had her powers enhanced. And so with her powers now being brought up to an all-new high of level, she was able to use her psychic knife on the mind of Magneto. Now, Magneto is a well-trained mutant. He knows how to protect his mind from different kinds of psychic attacks. Now, even though it is a powerful one, she can't completely bring him down. Now, before Rogue is able to give out the knockout punch, well, unfortunately, the entire X-Men team are turned to chrome statues by another Acolyte that had arrived is a tad bit too late. An Acolyte going by the name Chrome. And of course, their ability is to turn people or objects into chrome. And so with the X-Men now being statues, you then have Magneto say, you know what, let's go ahead and bring them over to Asteroid M, where I will decide what should be their punishment for going against us and our goals. Now, once you have Magneto being able to get back over to Asteroid M, we do learn that Fabian Cortez, while he was healing up Magneto, he found something wrong with the DNA code of Magneto. Like, there was a part of his genetics that was actually engineered by someone else. And the question is, how is that possible? How was somebody able to change a part of Magneto's DNA? But apparently he does know where it could have came from. Now, we also learned that Russia had just launched a weapon into space, a plasma cannon. And this plasma cannon would have usually scared America, but now America is cheering on Russia, because right now they're going to use that weapon against Magneto. But now you have Magneto heading over to the school of Charles Xavier and also Moira McTaggart. Now this is Magneto questioning Charles Xavier, questioning Moira Taggart, because he believes that they had done something to his genetics. And so he has taken them into space so that they have nowhere to run. But this is Magneto saying, I know that one of you guys did something to my genetics, did something to my DNA. Now for Charles, he has no idea what Magneto is talking about, but Moira Taggart, yeah, she does. You see, there was a point in time where Magneto was a baby. Yeah, you heard that right. We had a baby Magneto, but he was then turned back into an adult by Eric the Red. But in that short period of time where he was a baby, he was staying with Moira Taggart, which means it had to be her. She did something to him. And so you have Magneto take Charles and Moira Taggart over to Asteroid M so that she's able to explain what she had done to Magneto in the past. You see, we do learn that when Moira Taggart had Magneto when he was a baby, she kind of realized that there was something wrong with his nervous system. And so she felt like if she was able to alter it or fix it, then most likely when he would grow up, he would not become a villain once again. Now, as we all know, when it came to Eric the Red, he was able to age up Magneto back into an adult. But as we saw over time, Magneto began to become a good guy, a leader of the X-Men, a teacher for the New Mutants. And so you had Moira Taggart believe at first that what she did actually worked. But the only reason why she did that to Magneto because she was hoping to find a way to save her son. Now for Magneto, he now feels like all the moves he made over a short period of time in X-Men comics were no longer his own moves. That technically they were the moves of Moira Taggart because she changed him, she altered him. And so because of that, he said, listen, you are now going to work for me. You're going to help me make the X-Men follow my commands, follow my orders, and you better not tell me no, because if you try to tell me no, I will kill you. And so unfortunately, Moira Taggart has no choice but to go ahead and help out Magneto to make Cyclops' team follow his commands. But then we get a small glimpse of Omega Red, and this is really big because you have the general of the Soviet Union handing over this container that contains Omega Red, a character we're going to see in our next X-Men video. But while you have him handing over this container, we see him handing it over to Matsuo. Now, Matsuo is actually a member of the Hand, a ninja organization. And by this point in Marvel Comics, he's one of their higher up leaders. But apparently, he wanted Omega Red for some unknown reason. And now he has it, he tells his guys to go ahead and kill off the general as he leaves with the container containing Omega Red. But now we have to jump over to the Gold Team. Now the Gold Team, they're running a simulation trying to figure out how are they going to save the Blue Team and Charles Xavier. But while they are doing that, they didn't get a message from Nick Fury. Now this is Nick saying, hey guys, I want to tell you that the Soviet Union had launched a weapon that's basically a plasma cannon, and it has the ability to punch a hole into a planet. They plan on using that cannon on Magneto's Asteroid M, which means if it does hit the asteroid, everyone on that Asteroid M base is going to die, including the Blue Team and Charles Xavier. So now the Gold Team has to hurry up and find a way to save their friends before Asteroid M gets blown out of space. And so getting into the third chapter for today's video, we do see, well, the X-Men heading over to Asteroid M. Now this is the Gold Team, and they're in a spaceship that's trying to not be detected by Magneto or any of his defenses at all. But we can see our heroes are kind of wondering, how in the world are they going to be able to pull something off like this? But the thing is, they have to at least try to save their teammates, to save Charles Xavier. But while they're doing that, back on the ground, you have Nick Fury talking to the different leaders who are involved with the whole Magneto protocol. And this is Nick kind of wondering, what in the world are you guys doing? Like, think about this. What if your plasma cannon does not actually destroy the asteroid? What if the asteroid just get pushed right into the Earth and then bang, you would cause severe damage to our planet? But for these leaders, they're kind of like, hey, we have to take a chance here. We have to try and see if we are able to wipe out Magneto's asteroid. Almost said aircraft there. Now we do see Fabian Cortez kind of questioning Magneto on why haven't he tried to have Charles Xavier also be under his control like the blue team is. But you have Magneto say, I don't want to have Charles under my control. I want to see him broken. I want to show him what I am able to do and what I did to his dream, but also to his students. Now you have Moira McTaggart once again try to talk back to Magneto by saying, listen, Charles is innocent and so is his X-Men team. The only person that you should be mad at right now is me. I was the one who was playing with your genetics. Now Magneto knows that, but he does not care. But he does get very upset that she had decided to raise her voice at him. But the problem is, in the middle of him yelling, he begins to feel weak once again. Now, there is something I did forget to mention in this story, that every once in a while, Magneto needs Fabian to heal him up. But the problem is, Fabian is not properly healing Magneto. Like, yes, he is, but he's also doing harm to Magneto's body as well. And he's doing it on purpose. Now, the reason why is not told to us until the very end of this book. But for Moira McTaggart, she realized that Fabian is helping Magneto, but also hurting Magneto. But now we are able to pick up with the blue team. Now, when we do, we see the blue team is completely under the control of Magneto, thanks to Moira McTaggart. And so you have the blue team just kind of hanging out. But we can also see that different members of the team are beginning to remember their past lives, but it's kind of hard for them to remember completely. And really, our first example is Rogue, who's kind of like, wait a second, something is wrong here. Now, you have the other team, the gold team for X-Men, getting close to Asteroid M. And Moira McTaggart, she saw them coming, even though they were trying their best to hide from Asteroid M and Magneto's detections. They're still being seen by Moira McTaggart. And Wolverine realized that she knows that somebody is coming very soon. And most likely, it's the other X-Men team. And so for Wolverine, he said, you know what? It's time for us to get ready to host for our visitors. Now, once you have the gold team being able to get onto Asteroid M, they do have to fight against the other X-Men team. Now, this fight is very short-lived. Like, yes, we do get a few cool pages where you have Jim Lee showing us his work on all these different X-Men characters, but you didn't have the blue team remember who they are and what they are, that they are the X-Men. They're not with Magneto at all. And so they once again realize that they're on the wrong side and they rejoin the gold team. Now, as soon as they do that, you have Magneto appear. Now, you do have Magneto once again try to make a statement. The whole idea of he was just only trying to help out the mutant kind, trying to get back at the human race for what they have done to their people. But then you have Magneto fall to the ground where he feels like something is wrong with him. And so you have Moira McTaggart say, yes, there is something wrong with you. But first, let me explain. You see, I did alter your genetics. I did change your DNA, but it could only work if you did not use your powers. And as we know, you did, which means all that time where you were the headmaster of Charles Xavier School, where you were the teacher for the New Mutants, that was you. That was your choices. It wasn't like I completely changed you and forced you into that role. That was all you, my dude. But she also says Fabian Cortez has been using you. He only heals you up to a certain point where then you require him more often because he was waiting for the right moment to make you become a martyr. You see, once you are dead, the mutant race will then rally around your death, and then they'll try to go to war with the human race. He has set everything up when it comes to Russia and their plasma cannon, you and everyone else around here. It was all Fabian Cortez. And once you have everyone realize that, homeboy dipped out. He is already on escape pod going back to Earth. And so, yeah, it was Fabian Cortez. In the plasma cannon, it does fire, and it does hit Asteroid M, and it does seem like it's going to explode. Now, you have the X-Men being able to get on their ship to head back to Earth, but Magneto and his Acolytes, minus Fabian Cortez, they stay behind. They want to die on Asteroid M. And the book kind of ends with Asteroid M blowing up and having us wondering if Magneto and his acolytes had officially died. But either way, the X-Men can now head back home to Earth. And this begins the new era of X-Men comics. But unfortunately, the new era goes on without Chris Claremont, because this was the last book he wrote for X-Men comics at this point in time in Marvel Comics. He left Marvel completely. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.